Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Vandy Sports Podcast. Here's your host, Chris Lee. Commodore fans, on your feet. It's time to anchor down.
Welcome to the Vandy Sports Podcast, presented by Dr. Jody Jones, DDS. We are part of the 440 Sports Network. I'm your host, Chris Lee. Our guest today, Sam Phelan. He's our basketball writer at Vandy Sports. Let's get right into our conversation with Sam as we talk about Vanderbilt's win over Texas A&M and more. Sam Phelan joins us. We're talking Commodore basketball. Vandy fresh off a win over Texas A&M. It's got the fan base excited. Sam, welcome back to the show. I know you were there in Memorial on Saturday night. What did you see?
Yeah, Chris, it was exciting. Like you said, fan base is pretty excited just because Vanderbilt's finally winning some of these tough games. And that's kind of how I would describe what was going on this weekend. It was just a real gritty win from the Commodores, and without Rodney Chapman, not playing necessarily their A lineup at all times, but working the rotations, and then down the stretch, having to battle against the foul trouble that Vanderbilt was in to keep Texas A&M off the line in the last couple minutes and really grind out a win was really impressive and is reason to be excited because it's basically been win or go home here. It is going to continue to be that way for the last couple weeks.
How much does Liam Robbins mean to this team? Are you as surprised that they're getting as much out of him as they are right now, given the nature of his injury, given how out of shape he looked when he came back from the Kentucky game and all those things?
I don't know if I would say I'm surprised. I mean, Chris, you know me. I've been tooting Liam Robbins' horn since the first time you had me on this podcast. I'm just a really big fan of his game and what he allows them to do. But yeah, I mean, his first few games were incredibly disappointing. You could tell Liam wasn't very well conditioned. You could tell kind of the rhythm and flow of a full 40-minute basketball game wasn't coming naturally to him. And seems each game now, he seems to be getting a little bit better, a little bit more conditioned. And that's something he's been speaking on after the games as well, just telling us that the speed of the game can't really be replicated in practice. And the more he gets comfortable, we see the more he can do. And as far as what he does for the team, I don't think you could talk about it enough. Him and Quentin Malora-Brown being on the floor at the same time has really showed a new sort of dynamic to the Vanderbilt offense and defense that has really helped them down the stretch in some of these tough games and allowed them to play competitively with some really good teams.
How are you seeing them make up for the loss of Rodney Chapman?
Well, I think it is that bigger lineup that I said. That was one thing that Stack really first debuted in the game at Auburn. And he talked about how he was going to continue to work on little funky rotations like that to kind of offset the loss of Chapman. Without Chapman on the floor, you really have Pippen, and you don't have another guard that you feel like you can give the ball to and be your ball-dominant guy and create shots unless you're winning the one-on-one size matchups. And with Quentin Malora-Brown and Robbins on the floor, I really like how Jordan Wright has looked and his ability to kind of slot out and be the true slashing guard that I think his body wants to be and that he wants to be. So I think Wright has looked a lot more comfortable, and it makes people like Thomas and Dezzoni, who are not going to be anchors for you off the bench, but it makes them have to do less because, one, you're controlling the paint and your ability to rebound, and two, you're not working as hard defensively. And those are things that Rodney really brings to the team. But in his absence, you have to find another answer. And for now, I think Stack has really been pleased with the big lineup.
Yeah, the bench is a little scary right now, though. That's the biggest issue I see for them going forward.
I've been worried about it myself. I thought that was kind of going to be the Achilles heel against A&M. I've really not been a fan of what I've seen out of Tyron Frank recently, but part of that's with the knee injury to Jermaine Mann as well, and Rodney being down. You're just so depleted in your depth, and you like your starting five with Pippen, Studi, Wright, Malora-Brown, and Robbins, but Trey Thomas can hit a few shots. Dezzoni's not that bad. He's got good athleticism and certainly a higher ceiling. But in terms of a guy you can go to right now to go get baskets for you and play strong minutes off the bench, there's not a ton of options. So that is the one thing I think is the main concern for me personally going forward, is just where do those bench minutes come from? And can people like Tyron Lawrence or Gabe Dorsey continue to step up or take a step forward to being a more dynamic player off the second unit?
Scotty Pippen Jr. today got named Co-SEC Player of the Week. We've talked about how Chapman helps him out, but here he is playing without him and playing his best ball of the season probably. How do you explain that?
Yeah, I think Scotty's really starting to figure out what a good offensive game for him looks like. You know, his ability to get to the free throw line is something that you can't really replicate or necessarily teach. He's got great body control. I will say it's gotten him into trouble sometimes, him trying to pump fake a three-pointer and turning the ball over because of it. But I think he's really started to figure out how to get to his spots and does so in such a way that's not forcing any looks up. So to go along with that, I do think having an increased post presence with Liam Robbins and also a big man in Robbins who's able to stretch the floor really helps Pippen. You know, with Tyron Frank, he has not been shooting it well. We know Quentin Malora-Brown doesn't have much range with the ball in his hands, but starting in that Auburn game, Liam Robbins started to kind of show his ability to shoot the three, shoot mid-rangers a little bit, and that makes that pick and roll even more dangerous. And the other thing, Chris, last thing on Pippen is, with those two bigs, Jerry Stackhouse has also talked about how Vanderbilt is running the pick and roll to both sides of the court. And I think that's something that's really, really special that maybe goes unnoticed by a lot of people watching the games. You can watch Pippen get the ball in his hands at the top of the key, get a screen, and if there's nothing there, he can head the other way and know that Malora-Brown or Robbins can both set picks for him to free him up and give him space, and it makes him a more dynamic scorer.
Are you ready for the mailbag?
I'm ready for the mailbag. Hit me.
All right, let's go. Our mailbag is sponsored by Sutherland & Belk, a family-owned injury law firm. If you or a loved one has been hurt in an accident, give Taylor or Russell a call. That number 615-846-6200. See what your rights are and if they can help. NBA Doors has picked the final record for the team after the SEC tournament ends.
Final record. So do you want me to go for let's go over the SEC record. So we're 6-8 right now, got 4 left. I will say 10-10.
Whoa, you've got them running the table.
Well, 4 left. I think they'll take 3 out of 4.
Well, if they do that, then that's 9-10, or that's 8-10. Or no, wait. That's 9-9.
6-8 right now, so they'll be 9-9, and then I think they get 1 in the SEC tournament, losing their second game, and finish 10-10.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, yeah, they generally don't count those, but he did say after the SEC tournament. So yeah, you're right in answering it the way you did.
I think it'll be right at 500 there. I like where they're going, but running the table, I think that's just probably not going to happen. It's tough to win that many games in the SEC in a row, especially without some of your best guys like Chapman.
NBA Door, he's got several here. If Coach Jerry Stackhouse is banking on development, could you explain the lack of backcourt player development this year?
The lack of backcourt development, I think that probably refers to DeZoni, maybe, but I'm not sure I would agree with the idea that there hasn't been any backcourt development. I think Jordan Wright has looked a lot better as a player than he has in years past, and he's definitely had his struggles throughout the year, but him and Miles Studi have both taken a step forward. I don't know if you would technically consider them members of your backcourt, but guys like Shane DeZoni, Tyron Lawrence, I think you just got to give those guys a little bit of time here. As their usage rate goes up, their minutes go up. When guys like Pippen are no longer in the program, you'll see them start to develop. I think he is working with them on that, but I'm not sure I would agree with the premise that there's been no backcourt development. I just think it might not be out of the freshman guys that you would look for to take that jump.
Another one from NBA Door. How would you rate Coach Jerry Stackhouse's job year to date?
On a scale of 1 to 10, or am I giving him a grade?
Oh, you can answer that however you like.
All right. Well, I think, let's see what I want to do here. I'll give him a nice B minus, and a B minus to a B out of Stack this year. If I'm giving him a grade, if I'm his teacher, I do think he's done a really solid job given some of the injuries they've had, and there have been times that I haven't always agreed with decisions he's made in a game, and there's been some reason to be concerned for sure. But looking at where they sit right now and the opportunity they have over the last couple of weeks, I really do feel like the locker room is buying in to Jerry Stackhouse's culture. And, this is just not a type of team. This win over Texas A&M is not something that they would have done in years past. And if you look at Stackhouse and where the team is at compared to most coaches taking over winless programs in a conference in their third year of developing the program, I think Vanderbilt's in a really good spot. And you have to take a lot of pride knowing that Stackhouse is getting the ship in the right direction, and there's an opportunity potentially, with rumors coming out soon, to retain some of the talent on this team and be even more competitive going forward. So, you definitely want to be a contender for that postseason play. That door's not all the way shut yet, perhaps, but even though it's looking dire, there's definitely been a lot of improvement, and it's been on guys different than Pippen. We haven't seen Pippen going for like 30 points a game, and that's why the team's been better. But he's shown his ability to get guys out of the transfer portal that have really helped the team and the team's success, and just coach a defense that is strong and an offense that is strong and a little bit more of a balanced team. And the improved defense is a big thing for me because that's how you have success that lasts a long time and create longevity within a program.
Last one from NBA Door. Will Coach Jerry Stackhouse get an extension after this season? He is currently ending his third season with 3 to go on the contract. Will his not even having a contract through the end of the upcoming signing class hinder him on the recruiting trail? I don't think 3 years left on your contract after this year. I don't see that as a hindrance, but I'll let you give your take on that.
I mean, I don't know what the level of urgency is out of Vanderbilt to offer him an extension. I don't know if that's something that he's due for, but I definitely think you could make a case that he's earned it, especially if they finish with my prediction. There's no promises on that at all. Obviously, they still got to go out and play the games, and they got to finish strong here down the stretch. But if he's able to get them right up at that 500 mark in the SEC, I don't really think you can argue against what he's been able to do this year, especially being without Liam Robbins for the first 20 games of the season and now seeing what Liam Robbins can do on this team. I mean, you have to give Stack a little bit of credit for trying to keep this thing together and keep them going the right direction, at least a little bit, with the absences of Chapman and Robbins. And you wonder if they're healthy, what they could have done. So if they're able to get right at that 500 mark, I don't see why an extension would be, I don't think that would be necessarily a bad thing at all. I think you could definitely make an argument that he's earned that.
T.B. Graham asks, how would you see the minutes at the guard position opposite Pippen? Should we try going really big with Wright at the 2 and Studi at the 3? They can't be worse ball handling with that lineup compared to what they got from the other scholarship guys on Saturday. Or do you go with Drew Weichert or let Dezzoni grow into that role?
I don't think – I personally do like the Wright and Studi. I like just having the best guys out there. Stack has said that he hasn't been the biggest fan of Miles at the 3 just from a defensive standpoint. Miles is a lot more comfortable in that kind of off-guard position where he can catch and shoot. In terms of those guard minutes, I don't know if Drew Weichert is an option going forward as you get down into this. I'm going to assume Tyron Lawrence is going to get a big increase in playing time. Stack basically gave him the game ball for the win over Texas A&M and liked what he was able to do defensively. But I do think we still see Dezzoni. I think we see Tyron Lawrence, and then maybe occasionally Studi and Wright both out there with Pippen. But I think you'll see some sort of combination of Trey Thomas and Dezzoni, or Trey Thomas and Tyron Lawrence coming off the bench for the remainder of the year.
Dylan32 asks, why is Tyron Lawrence not getting more playing time? Dude is clearly one of the more athletic players on this team and can score the basketball almost at will at times.
Well, yeah, I mean, going back to what I said, I think he's going forward. Stack has been adamant about earning your minutes, and whatever he's been seeing in practice out of Tyron Lawrence wasn't what he felt was earning him minutes at the time, and he thought he was going with other options. And to Stack's credit, some of his offensive production hadn't been there for the longest time, but I do think in that A&M game, you saw what he's capable of defensively. He's got one of the bigger bodies in their backcourt that's available to them. And after a great performance where he did all the little things well, had a big steal at the end of the game that kind of won them the game with a few deflections, a big putback dunk at one point, and just good hustle on the floor. Those are the type of things that get rewarded in Jerry Stackhouse's team and in his program. And so going forward, I would say tomorrow night, Alabama, we're going to see a little bit more of Tyron Lawrence than we maybe have in the games prior.
Okay, ATT Murph asks, what is the backcourt plan for 2022-23? Not sure who will play point guard with Chapman and Pippen moving on. Lots of pressure on Shelby.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of pressure on Noah Shelby, but I'm going to take a little bit of an issue with the question. I don't think it's set in stone that Scotty Pippen Jr. moves on from this team, especially if Liam Robbins is coming back and if Quentin Malora-Brown is coming back and he believes that there is more to be done here at Vanderbilt. I mean, I don't think he's going to be a pick in the NBA draft. So is it worth jumping ship now to try and go to the G League, or can he finish it out one more year, get that degree, finish his time with Stackhouse, and try and see if he can make the tournament with Vanderbilt before he moves on? And I don't think that Pippen is necessarily walking out the door, and until you know where he's going, I'm not sure you can plan for the backcourt. But I also think they'll be active in the transfer portal should they lose Scottie Pippen Jr. to get a more ball-dominant guard.
Yeah, he told Terry McCormick at the Ledger last week that he was going pro. I don't know that article got a lot of play publicly, but he did make that statement definitively recently.
All right, well, then I stand corrected. I had not seen the Terry McCormick article.
I figured you hadn't. I shouldn't have let you hang like that. I'm sorry.
No, you're all right. But, yeah, I mean, if he's moving on, I think they're active in the transfer portal. We've said that, especially if Robbins and Quentin are returning, though. Stack makes this an even more attractive destination. Got a good recruiting class. You like Noah Shelby, but I think a veteran ball-dominant guard, almost somebody who can mirror Rodney Chapman in the sense of getting an experienced guy that can have the ball in his hands and control your offensive tempo, will be big for them. But then you obviously let guys like Dizzoni and Shelby start getting acclimated and trying to develop as the future of your backcourt.
Last one from Top Shelf. Why do you think Stackhouse will almost never call a timeout to slow down a run by the other team as big as a dozen or more? I think he means with the lead as big as a dozen or more. But anyway, Jerry is notorious for not calling timeouts. What are your thoughts there?
I mean, I'm not really sure. I don't really know about. I have never asked Stack about his timeout strategy. If I had to guess, I think he just wants to show a little bit of poise and save that. He talks about poise and resilience, and he wants his guys to battle through that. I also think some of that is just trying to make sure with a lack of maybe rotational pieces to move around, making sure guys are getting rest and time's coming off the clock for foul trouble and things like that. But, yeah, I'm not really too familiar with Stack's timeout strategies. Maybe I'll have to ask him that after an upcoming game.
We made a pretty efficient run through the mailbag there. Any thoughts or things that we didn't get to regarding the state of Vandy hoops these days? This season of the Vandy Sports Podcast is made possible by my friend Dr. Jody Jones, DDS. When it comes to general or cosmetic dentistry services, Jody is the best in Nashville. And just check out his client list. It testifies to that. He sees movie stars, music stars, athletes, coaches, you name it. Jody is the dentist of choice for stars in Nashville, but he sees regular folks like you and I as well. And what people like about the experience is the ambiance. Someone described it to me as a tooth spa. I went in and looked at it myself. That's exactly what it is. It is a relaxing, friendly environment. So whether your dental needs are general or cosmetic, go see Jody. Call him at 615-270-2322. His office is located at 55 Music Square East, not far from downtown Nashville, not far from the Vanderbilt campus. Jody is a former Vanderbilt football player, a huge booster of Commodore athletics. His support as the title sponsor for Season 7 is the reason we are able to do this podcast. Go see Dr. Jody Jones today. Thank him for his support of the Vandy Sports Podcast and tell him you heard about it here.
Well, yeah, I do want to talk about the Alabama game. I
that's a big one. Yeah,
featured a little bit of it in my recent write-up, but just kind of looking at the defense, Chris, I'm not sure if you took a look at that, but I really think Vanderbilt's defensive strategy can determine this game. I think Alabama, this game is probably the toughest remaining one on the schedule when you look at, their aspirations to run the table and close this thing out on the right foot here. Tomorrow night's a huge game. And, as I wrote up about it, this Alabama team is really interesting to me because they don't hesitate to shoot the basketball. They're 12th in the SEC, shooting the three-pointer at 27.9%, and yet they take the most three-pointers of any team in the SEC. So 12th in percentage, but most in attempts. You have to exploit that if you're Vandy because Alabama is also the number one team at getting to the free throw line in the SEC, and we saw how much trouble Vanderbilt can get in with that aggressive defense. I love the amount of steals that they're able to get. Jordan Wright with 6 of them against A&M, and there is a benefit of that, but you can't have teams getting into the bonus with 12, 13 minutes to go. And Alabama's going to do the same thing A&M did, going to do the same thing South Carolina tried to do, and the same thing Mizzou tried to do. They're going to come into Nashville and try and muck up a game and get to the foul line as much as possible. And if Vanderbilt gets into foul trouble again, we already talked about it. There's not enough bench options to win a game late, and you can't give away 3 points by getting a team into the bonus early. So I'd like to see a little bit more soft coverage on the ball, forcing Alabama to shoot the three and prove they can make the three offensively before you really get aggressive and try and go for some of the traps because they really don't have a ton of size on the Alabama side of things, or at least two good rebounders that Malora Brown and Robbins couldn't handle when they're on the floor together. So you feel good about controlling the paint if you're the Commodores.
I'm going to disagree with you a little bit on that question. Alabama's not been great on the road, and Mississippi State has been horrible on the road, but really good at home. I think State might be their toughest game, and plus Alabama's won in Memorial it's like once or twice in the last 25 years. It's pretty crazy.
I just look at Alabama as the team that's really
Alabama's a better team. Yeah, and I'm sorry to cut you off. Where you may be right is they got 4 really good guards, and I don't know that matches up really well with Vanderbilt. Now that I think more about it.
Yeah, they're really going to have a tough time defending those guards. That's part of why I would like to see them just force them to shoot. If they're going to shoot the three and they're going to knock down the three, then you have to defend. But if Vandy comes out aggressive and is trying to hang with the Crimson Tide early on, just playing one-on-one man defense and forcing some turnovers, I think they're going to pick up a lot of fouls. I think they're going to get beaten one-on-one matchups, and I just don't like that matchup for them. So I think if they stay back, play a little bit more conservative on D, that bodes better for them long-term in that game. And then just looking at Alabama as a team as a whole, they got a nice road win over Ole Miss, who's not a very good team, but they beat them pretty good. They beat Arkansas at home as well, and we've seen the Razorbacks just come on so strong as a contender in the SEC and a potential dark horse in the NCAA tournament, and they played Kentucky really tough. So Alabama's been playing some of their best basketball of the year late, and I think they're really peaking, making a run at good NCAA tournament seeding and trying to get up the ranks of the SEC right now. They want to keep that number 5 spot. They're barely clinging to it, and they're right in that mess of LSU, Florida, South Carolina, and I believe Mississippi State all at 7-7. So I do look at them, though, and I think they have the best resume, and they're playing really good ball. So this might be a team that's coming in with a lot of confidence to Nashville.
Sam, did we miss anything?
No, sir. Just 4 more to go, trying to run the table, and I think they're going to need all of them.
Tell folks how to follow you on Twitter.
My Twitter is Sam_PHALEN. That's Sam_Phelan on Twitter. For all the Vandy write-ups, some post-game quotes, fun stuff like that before and after every game. I'll try and be as active with the Vandy content as possible on there.
Hey, thanks, Sam. We'll catch you next week.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. We thank our presenting sponsor, Jody Jones DDS. We thank our other sponsors, Sutherland and Belk and MyPerfectFranchise.net. If you're interested in sponsoring this podcast, and that's how we make this work, please email me at chrisley70@gmail.com. We also ask that you subscribe to our website, vandysports.com. That is $99 a year. You get things there that you don't get here. And of course, please rate, review, and subscribe where you see our podcast. That helps us get noticed. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at vandysports.com. Follow me at chrisley70. And finally, subscribe to our Vandy Sports YouTube channel as well. Thank you for listening to the Vandy Sports Podcast, which is part of the 440 Network. I'm your host, Chris Lee. We'll catch you with another episode coming very soon.